Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, a nationally ranked community-focused bank with over 30 locations throughout Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, and North Carolina. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more. What's going on, Hokies fans? It's been a minute, and it's good to talk to you. We got a lot to unpack for you on our May recap. We're talking Virginia Tech football and Virginia Tech basketball, maybe even the new college football video game coming out as well. Episode 362 of the Tech Sideline Podcast is on tap, and it starts right now. Welcome in once again, Hokies fans, to episode 362 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, but this episode is also presented by the Master of Agricultural and Applied Economics degree at Virginia Tech. The Department of Agricultural and Applied Economics at Virginia Tech is a premier world-class department ranked globally in the top 10%. Visit online-ms.aaec.vt.edu today to learn how you can accelerate your career with our 100% online Master of Agricultural and Applied Economics degree. Episode 362 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. We got the entire football crew on set. David Cunningham, of course, sitting in our fourth chair. Senior staff writer Andy Bitter on the set. And then Chris Coleman, back from a trip. Chris, we're glad to have you back. The mustache man behind the scenes. And Sam Mostow, who's our excellent softball beat writer, is in to shadow behind the scenes today. And I'm your host, Giovanni Heater. Fellas, welcome back. Feels like it's been way too long. Chris, how was the trip? Andy's still recovering, as am I, from some softball the other night, and we're ready to roll.
Trip was good. Wish I was still there because I have no allergies when I'm in Europe. I come back and I feel horrible again. I'm coughing almost as much as Andy.
It's a tough task.
Yeah.
Bronchitis, do not recommend. Not enjoyable. If you can avoid that, try to avoid that. So
nice. Well, those that don't know, David, Andy, and I play on a softball team with Nick as well, and a bunch of other TSL people at this point, and we lost 21-10, and Bob Schick was on the other team. So
it's good football score. 21-10.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. It was not. It was not our finest effort.
Andy and I make up the middle infield, and we don't make many plays.
No, it was pretty rough. Like, getting back into it, like, I'm old now. It's tough to play infield. The first game I played there at Short, like, I handled myself okay. Just contributed nothing the other day. Like, every grounder, I could not get an out on it. Like, a line drive went straight through my glove. It was embarrassing.
Y'all should switch.
So, I don't know. I don't know if Gio had it much better in the game in second. Yeah. It was, I don't know how many options we have on the roster, but we might need to explore
reach down
those
to
going forward.
Yeah. It doesn't help that we don't hit that well as a team. Either. The Bats got to come
10 runs. A little bit. 10 runs should win you that game. You got to play some defense.
Fair. And everyone would probably think Bob Schick was the best player on the other team. And I don't know. Everybody could hit.
They had a loaded lineup.
They did.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal team going up against there.
No doubt. Let's get into things a little bit here. First, we're talking football today, and we do have a lot to unpack here. It's been a minute since we talked to everybody. First and foremost, I think we got to go with the late football transfer portal additions here after the spring ball period. Curtis Perry transfers in, defensive lineman, 6'2", 265 out of Alabama. 3-star according to the transfer portal metrics on 247 Sports. And then Caleb Spencer, ACC guy, comes over from the University of Miami, 6'2", 200, a linebacker, kind of filling a hole in the middle.
Yeah, I think when you look at Perry, I know you're a 4-star guy from Alabama. You're probably going to go to Alabama if they offer you, but he shouldn't have gone to Alabama. Not a fit for their scheme at all. He's not really tall enough to play their end role. Excuse me, and he's not big enough to play nose guard for them, obviously. So that was never a good fit for him. He's a much better fit as a 3-technique defensive tackle for Virginia Tech. So I think the Hokies are going to get more out of him. I think he can step in and challenge Panay for that 5th defensive tackle spot immediately, and then he'll still have 2 years left after that. Caleb Spencer, interesting guy that Virginia Tech basically replaced one former LCA tweener with another LCA tweener.
That's right.
Antonio Cotman hit the portal LCA. Spencer comes in, who was the same recruiting class, I believe, as Cotman. Played special teams at Miami this past year. He's a little bit bigger than Cotman. I think he's more likely to play star linebacker, and I think that's what Pry believes at this point. We'll see. Like, LCA players, you can look it up in my article that I wrote yesterday, but they have a very, very, very low percentage of success.
Is it LC?
There are two LCAs.
Okay.
We're talking.
It's not Liberty Christian Academy.
It's not Liberty.
That one has actually produced some very good players.
It's Liberty Christian is in Lynchburg.
Right.
We're talking Life Christian.
Christian,
which is outside Richmond in Colonial Heights. They don't even have their own home stadium. All their games are on the road, and I don't know. It's a football factory that doesn't produce good players at the top level of college football. I'm seriously, like,
the track record's not been great so far.
I encourage everyone to check out the article.
Of their 9 players that have signed with Power 5 teams since 2020, the best one so far has been Bruce Carter, who's a backup defensive tackle at UVA who played 150 snaps last year. And only 2 of those 9 haven't transferred, right? So it's just, if you wouldn't take LCA to Vegas, right? You wouldn't bet on LCA players working out in Vegas. So this is a very interesting move by Virginia Tech. I know Brent Pry likes to take in-state kids, but when Virginia Tech originally took Cotman, everybody was like, oh yeah, in-state. And I can't write this, but I never thought he was going to work out because of that background. So again, this is one you wouldn't take to Vegas, but I do think he's a better prospect than Cotman. I do think he's bigger, he's stronger, versatility that you like, and he's got growth potential. But at the same time, you look at the track record of players from that school, and again, you wouldn't bet on it in Vegas.
I think both these guys, they take them because they have 3 years left. I think that was the big selling point on both of them. It wasn't necessarily positions of need. You look at defensive tackle, they were pretty set there in terms of number of guys they brought in this year. But if you have a guy for 3 more years, potentially, you're thinking long term, because you're going to lose Peebles, you're going to lose Fuga, you're going to lose Panay after this season. You're going to have to find another tackle come December anyway. So this was sort of a long range thinking with this pickup, and certainly a talented guy. If somebody can play at Alabama or be recruited to Alabama, pretty talented. Spencer, excuse me, a little bit. I think ideally they would have looked for somebody that was sort of like Canteen, like last year, where he could play corner, he could play safety, shuttle between the two. I don't know if Spencer has that coverage ability. Sounds like more of a star linebacker, which is where they're going to start him, boundary safety type. Probably even said maybe he could grow into a will linebacker, something like that. So maybe not the perfect fit, but again, 3 years left. I think that's what they're looking at with these pickups. What can they develop these guys into in a couple years?
And I think he's got a red shirt available too, Spencer. So if they really, really wanted to say, hey, we want to make this a long-term thing, we don't know what position quite yet, they could redshirt him. It's not impossible. I just thought I'd get that in there early.
Always be redshirting.
Oh, that's right.
Always be redshirting. All right, let's go ahead and turn the page a little bit here. Talk about these new uniforms. Obviously, Hokie Nation's been calling for it. They've been hyped for it. What do we know? What can we say about the new threads for Virginia Tech football coming up this year?
They're coming midsummer. I talked to Whit Babcock in Amelia Island. He said a week or so, which I don't know why he said that. It's sort of a misstep. They don't have the uniforms. They're waiting for them to come from Nike. So maybe got people's hopes up a little early there. Only have to deflate them a bit the following week. So sounds like there'll be more of a traditional look. I don't know if that means exact replicas of the Vic era jerseys. I know a lot of people have put that out there. I'm like, I don't know if that's necessarily true. If there's a modern touch to them, I'm not sure exactly. It sounds like it'll be sort of in that vein, though. I know the collarbone stripes are gone. I know those were very divisive among the fan base. I think if Virginia Tech had won more in the most recent years, that people would like them more, but they haven't won that much. So therefore, it's the uniform's fault, right? So sometime this summer, we'll see. Baylor just revealed theirs. They're a Nike school. Have to imagine Virginia Tech's coming up fairly soon, but I don't have an exact date.
It's funny, I think the last Q&A I wrote before I went on vacation, one of the questions was what's your all-time favorite set of uniforms? And I gave my top 3, and my first was the home uniforms from 98 to 2003. My number 2 was the away uniforms from 98 to 2003, and my number 3 was the home uniforms from 2004 to 2007. I like a clean look.
Were those like
uniforms.
the
small
stripe,
the piping? I would say. Yeah.
And not the one maroon sleeve, one orange sleeve.
Yeah, that was that was like a 1 or 2 game alternate. Marcus,
I didn't like those.
I thought they were bad. Yeah, I thought they were bad. That was really when Virginia Tech started to. We're going to try a lot of different uniform combinations and things like that. That was the start of that. Would
you love to see a return of those Nike Pro Combat, like the black ones that they wore? You didn't like those?
I hate them.
That's like the favorite uniform of probably the majority of the fan base, I would say.
You know what my least favorite football game is in Virginia Tech
Well, that's
history?
the problem.
The Boise State game. Every time I see somebody wearing that jersey, it reminds me of my least favorite moment as a Virginia Tech fan, and I just want to take the jersey off and beat them with it.
That's your least favorite moment?
That's my least favorite game.
That was worse than the Matt Ryan game.
Oh, yeah. For me.
Really?
For me, it was.
Wow.
Yes.
Why? Well,
I don't know. I think it was the fact that it was the off-season hype. We waited all off-season for that game. That was the most Virginia Tech fans in one stadium ever. It was like 80 to 85,000 Virginia Tech fans in one stadium.
In a terrible stadium, FedEx.
Right. And I hardly ever get mad after a game. You know, I can get sad, I can be upset, but I was lividly mad after that game.
So those uniforms are just a trigger for you. Clearly, it's the uniform's fault that they lost that game. But, I'm surprised they never wore them again that season. Just superstition or something like that. But
maybe
that's the problem. Is sometimes they break out these, like the Hokie Stone with the black pants and everything was Battle of Bristol. And then you lose that game. It's like, well, those are ruined. You can't wear those again. So
didn't they wear them at home once? But they wore it with white tops and bottoms.
Yeah,
with the
I
same
thought those looked
jersey.
sharp. I don't know. The Hokie Stones maybe is played out a little bit. I don't know if they need those as the alternate uniforms.
I love those. I think those are awesome.
I
Once
think
a year, those are awesome.
If there's some form of the all black Nike Pro Combat, whatever name they had with those, I think if they could alter those a little bit and bring those back, I think those would be quite popular with the fan base.
Well,
maybe not Chris,
maybe not me.
but others.
I think a little teaser for something we're going to talk about later. Andy, do you think that the new uniforms are going to be in the new video game, or is it going to be the old uniforms?
That I don't know.
David says no.
David says no. Could be as simple as like a patch a month in or something. But
If it's in the game, it's
Well,
in
I
the
liked
game.
all the people that are like, they're clearly not putting Virginia Tech in the trailer because they don't want to spoil the uniform release. It's like I don't know if that was the case.
that's true.
I mean, you just have to think about stuff that Virginia Tech has submitted EA, and if Virginia Tech doesn't have the uniforms,
Well, I mean,
you can
They had to submit the
mock-ups.
stuff up
They-
to like 6 months to a year.
Right, they
Yeah,
approved.
that's what
They
I
approved the
mean.
style in like the fall, I think.
yeah.
And part of the process of that, Pry was talking to me about this, is they had like J.C. Price, Pearson Priolo, guys like that have been around the program for a while, and they showed those guys some different concepts that they have, and they would vote on what was good and what they didn't like, and then they pared it down. They voted again. So, if those guys are the ones, with a lot of input, I would imagine that it's a very traditional look from the heyday of Virginia Tech. That's what you're going to get in the uniforms.
Yeah, I just meant more so like Tech fans, do you expect the new jerseys in the college football video game? It's like probably not, considering how long ago Virginia Tech probably had to submit those jersey designs to EA.
Well, it sounds like, not to get into the video game talk ahead of time, but it sounds like they can scan that stuff in very
true.
quickly. Like it's not like, oh my gosh, what do we do with this?
So
It's
maybe-
like they just like take a picture of it. It's like, all right, 5 seconds, it's in the game at that point. So
yeah, that's what I'm
we'll
saying.
see.
Maybe even if
Maybe,
not initially, it comes in the first patch or something like that.
We'll see. Yeah,
But
I'm sure it's a high priority to get the Virginia Tech
Yeah,
new uniforms,
Right.
all the patch problems that they'll have from the game.
Well, did you see everybody's got like at least 4 helmets and 4 uniform combinations, and then they were like, and some schools, including Oregon, have 20 plus. And it's
true.
like, okay, well that adds up. It's Oregon.
Hey, here's my question: is it 85 scholarships in the game?
yes,
Sweet.
yeah. I think
right,
they
now-
changed it so it's going to be 85 because it used to be 70.
Oh no, I know. I hated that. As like a ultra realism roster management type guy, I hated the 70 roster.
What is that? What is that baseball one? Do you play that baseball one where you don't actually play the game? It's all online.
Outside the park baseball?
Yeah.
I haven't played it in a few years, but yeah, that's my favorite baseball
I was gonna
game.
say
That sounds like that NFL head coach game where like you created a guy and then you just like sit in meetings all day.
Yeah.
Real fun.
Yeah. Well, we got some injury updates to talk about. Andy, you seemed a little optimistic about C.J. McCray in your recent article, but then maybe not, and the Hokies could be without their star punt returner and Tucker Holloway this upcoming season.
Well, it's not necessarily my optimism. It was Brent Pry's optimism. C.J. McCray sounds like he'll be back full strength in a week or so. That's good news. I mean, you saw him go down the spring game where he's on crutches at the end, and they carted him back to the locker room, and you're like, oh, man, this is like the worst thing you want from the spring game is anybody having a serious injury. And, he provides great depth and, explosive burst off the edge there in that pass rush group that they have. So that's good news to get him back. Less optimistic about Tucker Holloway. It sounds like he could miss the season. He's questionable for the season with a knee injury. He had a sleeve on his knee at the end of spring, missed the spring game. Some rumblings at the time that it could be a serious thing, and it sounds like it's serious enough that it could threaten his season. Now, he has a red shirt available to him. All the ink that was spilled in the discussion about whether or not he should burn his red shirt by playing against Liberty a couple years ago, and as it turns out, it's like, well, it didn't even matter. Now we can just use it this year. With the 4-game rule, maybe end of the season. You think maybe he could get back by then, but it sounds like it's going to be a deal where he probably will miss most of the season. So you don't have him, not as much of a blow to the receiving core where there are tons of guys there. Maybe more so at punt return where he was really a dynamic guy, but Jalen Lane is pretty good there too. A couple years ago, Middle Tennessee, he was 4th in the country. I think like a 14.5 yard average on punt returns. He did it at Boston College last year. He actually returned one for a touchdown, got negated by a penalty. So I think they'll have guys at that punt return spot. Aiden Green could possibly step in there as well. But what a game changer Holloway could be at that position. You would love to have both Holloway and Lane on the roster being able to do that.
No doubt about it.
McCray, I kind of count as a bonus because I thought after the spring game that he was done. We were hearing very bad things about that injury. So now I view it as almost like having an extra defensive end now because I wasn't expecting to have him this year. As far as Holloway goes, I want to go back to 2004. Virginia Tech had redshirt senior Jim Davis at defensive tackle, redshirt senior Eric Green at cornerback, both starting. They both made huge plays in that season. Green got a big pick at Miami. Jim Davis batted down a pass late against Miami. Got a big sack at North Carolina late to knock them out of field goal range in a 3-point game. Those guys were big players on Virginia Tech's ACC title team, and I don't know that Virginia Tech wins that title without them. And they were both still on that team because they had got injured earlier in their career and redshirted. And Jim Davis actually got hurt at the driving range, tore his pec playing golf.
Get out of here.
Dead serious. Yeah, so watch out, golfers.
Nick, we're golfing after this pod.
Yeah.
Me and you. We better be careful.
But, so you don't like to see players get hurt, of course, but sometimes getting that extra year is beneficial to your team. And I'm not saying that Holloway is going to go on and have like Jim Davis, Eric Green type career, but, you like to have as many fifth-year guys on your roster as possible that can make a big difference.
One more injury note, Andrew Hanchuk, defensive tackle, he's going to miss the season. I don't know that he would have played as defensive tackle with how deep that room is and how much physical development those inside guys need, but not expected to play this year.
Wanted to ask you, Chris, you kind of had some question marks, right? Does the question mark continue with the linebacker room? I know that they just made an addition out of Miami and Caleb Spencer. Do your question marks linger there a little bit, especially with the track record, so to speak, of where he comes from, as well as the corners and then the offensive line?
As far as linebacker goes, we don't even know who's playing what position right now. I mean, they flip-flopped them so much in the spring.
Do we know Sam is going to be the Mike?
We know okay. Brumfield's going to be the Mike linebacker. There we go. But
most of the time I would imagine. But I imagine that they'll rotate guys in there.
Yeah,
I think Jaden McDonald, Jaden Keller could both play there.
Right, agree. Like in the spring game, McDonald played Will, but like in the scrimmage we saw, he was playing Mike. Right, so who's going to be playing what position in those other roles? I don't know. I thought. Overall, last year, Jaden McDonald was their best linebacker. So, especially down the stretch, he made plays against the run that no other linebacker on this team has made, even Kelly Lawson. So I think he's their best linebacker that I've seen play at Virginia Tech. I would like to keep him at will, but we'll see. They keep hyping up Jaden Keller. They say he's taking the next step. We've heard that before.
That's gonna be I have to see it.
Exactly. So we'll see. I mean, I think there's good athletes at linebacker. And I think Brumfield's a natural inside linebacker. And I think McDonald has made progress. How much was Kelly Lawson's injury holding him back last year? How much was it the fact that he's maybe not a natural inside linebacker?
He still led the team in tackles.
He did lead the team in tackles, but he was also the third lowest grading linebacker in the entire country. So tackles aren't necessarily everything. Speed isn't necessarily everything. Athleticism isn't everything. You have to know where you're going and know what to do as an inside linebacker. You have to see things before they happen. I feel better about linebacker than I did last year, but still not totally convinced.
How about the offensive line at this point in time?
I don't think it's going to be a dominant offensive line. I think it will be a better than it was last year.
Fair to say maybe the weakest position group
on offense
on the roster?
I think it's the one that has still the most to prove.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think you saw that
That's a good way
last
to put
year.
it.
That even when they're putting up those big rushing totals, I don't know how much stock to put in the PFF rankings, but the offensive line still never got great rankings on there, great grades, even when they're rushing for 300 yards in some of those games. So until you see them go out there and really push around a good defense, I mean, look at what happened at Louisville. Louisville just overwhelmed them physically.
And NC State.
NC State was the same way, and those are two of the best defenses in the conference. So until you see them go out there and really handle themselves against a defense like that, I think it's going to be a question mark. And, a lot of the success Tech had was misdirection and confusing defenses more than just like lining up and running over them. But I think there are more options this year that they could have there. Brent Price as right guard is probably the one that's still the most open. Bob Schick, top guy there right now. But, they brought in Montavious Cunningham. Brody Meadows, played a lot last year. He also could be a timeshare guy at left guard. Leif Gannum is an option. I know he was a tackle for most of spring, but he moved inside a little bit. I think there's some other guys on the roster that could possibly step up if the first team's not cutting it, whereas last year it was basically Brody Meadows and maybe rotated in a little bit, but there weren't a ton of options there. And 2 years ago, they had nobody. They couldn't even get a starting five out there that they felt comfortable with. So that group is improving, I think, but offensive line, it just takes a while sometimes to get those guys not only get the numbers right, get the physical development right, and get some veterans in the room. And I think they're closer to that, but it's still something that has to be proven.
Safety is the other one for me. I have complete trust in Jalen Stroman, and I think he can play either safety role. But he was in and out of the lineup with injuries last year and targeted, and so was Nasir Peoples. And I know they're high on Jalen Jones as far as his athletic ability goes, but at the same time, I need to see him get his thing was tackling and angles. But that's what he has to improve on. But at the same time, teams don't tackle anymore in practice. So how can he really get better at tackling unless you're out there practicing it every day? And the teams, they just hit so little in practice these days that it's hard to get better at that. It's almost like you're either good at it or you're not. There's only so much you can do to improve yourself. But safety play was as big a culprit in Tech's run defensive issues last year as linebacker play. So that's the other one that you've got your eye on.
I think this is a fair thing to bring up since we haven't talked to everybody football-wise since the spring game. Everything's starting to come out. It's getting to be that time of the year, although usually for me it hits in the middle of July where I'm watching old games on repeat and you're watching all the highlight breakdowns of the last season. You're like, oh, college football is right around the corner. Now we're getting that bug in May, especially sitting on the set talking football with you guys. Can't wait for the fall. Virginia Tech returns more starters than anybody at the Power 5 level. You pretty much return almost nearly every starter from a year ago. How real is the hype? What is the ceiling? Where do we sit a month and a half later? I don't think the transfer portal additions since then really make that much of a difference, but just to test the waters, how's everybody feeling going into this year?
Pretty good. I think the schedule's favorable. Very favorable. I think with the way they open, I know they're on the road against Vanderbilt, but it's Vanderbilt. It's
13.5 point favorites.
Yeah, Yeah, and so then you've got Old Dominion is another road game, and I know what's happened the last two times Tech has played there, but that shouldn't be an issue this year.
We just gotta lock the locker room.
Right, exactly.
You say it's like something weird's gonna happen.
Marshall's week 2, by the way.
Marshall's week 2. That's in Lane, and then you've got Rutgers in Lane. So 2 teams Tech lost to in non-conference last year on the road are coming to Lane. Now, that stretch where you're going to Miami and you're going to Stanford after you play a physical Rutgers team, that's a stretch that concerns you. But overall, I look back at this team, and if they could play last season over again, and they could start running the scheme they eventually landed on in the spring, and they'd have figured out their offense and their quarterback a lot earlier, I feel like they would have beaten Purdue. They would have beaten Marshall, and we're talking about an 8-4 team last year instead of a 6-6 team. So we're talking about an 8-4 team that's bringing everybody back.
Right.
What would predictions be for that, right? So I'm optimistic about what I feel like this group should be able to accomplish. But at the same time, you have to factor in that, okay, now everybody else has a whole offseason to study film on Tech's misdirection and things like that. So you got to be ready with some counter punches and things like that. But I feel like they're in a good place.
You would like to see them go out and beat a good team. What was the best team they beat last year?
Pitt.
Nice.
Pitt was terrible.
Wake, Syracuse.
Tulane, technically,
BC,
but so many.
Maybe BC. That wasn't Tulane, though.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
A bunch of their guys had opted out.
They don't have
Was
the quarterback.
Syracuse
They
the
don't
only
have a
bowl
coach.
team they beat?
Boston College.
Boston College.
Boston College might have been the best win last year.
Probably.
Yeah.
That was a pretty mediocre
And
team.
they went on the road and did it, yeah.
So I think part of my restraint from being like they're going to be 10-2, they're going to be college football playoff or something like that, and I think they have that potential as a dark horse candidate in the ACC, but I need to see them beat a good team, and I don't know necessarily if you'll even see that in the non-conference portion of the schedule, because I think they should be heavy favorites in all those games. Maybe Rutgers is the closest of the 4 games there, but you feel good about this team because of the retention. Because of the continuity they have, a lot of talented players coming back, guys that could have gone to the NFL, been late round picks coming back, Dorian Strong, APR, guys like that. But I think it boils down to they have a really good quarterback, and they have a quarterback with a really high ceiling, and that hasn't happened a whole lot in the last decade here. And, sometimes we talk about roster construction. They got to get good here. Sometimes you just need to have a really good playmaking quarterback. And what was the last great one they had? Gerard Evans. What happened when he was here? They played in the ACC title game that year. Logan Thomas for that year in 2011 played in the ACC title game. Tyrod Taylor, his whole career, 3 ACC titles while he was here. Just the quarterback can be such a difference-making position. And they just really haven't had a guy in that, and certainly not someone returning from the previous year for the last decade. They had one in Hendon Hooker, and it didn't work out for a multitude of reasons. Then he goes somewhere else and becomes a Heisman finalist. So, the fact that Drones is coming back, the fact that Drones has this, game-breaking skill set that can turn the tide of a game, can make the difference in close games. I think that's the reason for the true excitement about this team. So that I'm interested to see in how he grows as a quarterback.
David, what you got for us over there?
Yeah, I want to elaborate on a point Andy made, where he said this team needs to beat a good team, and I thought back to the Monday Thoughts Will wrote after the Boston College game last year, and he called it the checklist, and he essentially went through and had a checklist of here are to-dos for Virginia Tech football. Beat bad/peer teams at home, which Virginia Tech has done. Beat bad/peer teams on the road, which Virginia Tech did about twice last year, but could still show a little bit more work there. Beat good teams at home, beat good teams on the road, and then beat great teams anywhere, right? Virginia Tech is still on that upward trajectory. There's still work to be done, and I think an SEC team like Vanderbilt is probably in one of those first 2 or 3 categories. But if you can beat a team like Vanderbilt, beat a team like Rutgers, and then you have a chance to go down and seriously beat a team like Miami and show that maybe the hype is a little bit for real. I think that's when the gears might really start to churn. But I think this team has a lot of the right pieces. I think it's trending upward. I think Tech is in the right position to take advantage of what it has in a lot of ways, but it still has a lot to prove. I don't think it's necessarily shown everything it's capable of yet, and I think that's the most exciting but also most interesting part of it, because it's like, yeah, this on paper, this is a really, really good Virginia Tech team, but Tech still hasn't beaten a good team under Brent Pry, really, and that's the next step. And if Virginia Tech can take that next step, and I think you might see them do that this season, then there's a reason that so many people are hyping up this team.
That Miami game's gonna be the "we're back" bowl. Like whoever wins that is back.
Assuming both teams start strong.
Yeah,
right.
I think.
I don't know what Miami's schedule looks like.
Well, they start with
season.
Florida in the opener.
but see,
Florida's not good. Florida's not good.
They should beat Florida.
Miami's favored by like 3.5 in that game. Oof. And then they play like USF, which might be actually a tricky game for them. But they should be undefeated going in that game. I would imagine they'll be favored in all their games, just like I think Tech will be favored in all those games. But man, if both those teams are 4-0 going into that game, like it'll be like nostalgia central. Like, oh man, back to the early 2000s of these teams, and it could be complete fool's gold, like that Florida State game in 2018, where it's like, okay, you beat a horrible team, and it didn't signify anything. This could be the same situation possibly, but I would imagine the hype going into that game, if both teams are 4-0. And people are feeling real nostalgic. The video game's back and from that era, and they're like, "Oh man, both these teams were great when this video game was out." I think that could be a really cool game and a fun atmosphere.
I would bet that Virginia Tech's unbeaten going into that game, but Miami's not. That would be my bet right now.
Interesting. You think Billy Napier pulls it off and Florida beats
I don't know.
them?
I don't know if it'll be Billy Napier.
No, I don't.
I don't know if it'll be Billy Napier. I don't know if it'll be South Florida or
Billy Napier
somebody
might
else.
be in a courtroom at that point, defending off charges.
Would that make Stanford a trap game?
I mean, Florida might just pull the plug on that thing this year, and Florida has a ridiculous schedule too. So,
wait, Stanford's before Miami.
No, Stanford's after Miami.
Stanford's after. Yes, that definitely makes Stanford.
I mean,
yeah. Well, of course, the biggest trap game is freaking Syracuse.
Syracuse, yeah, but we knew
at
that.
Syracuse, the Carrier Dome, the week before the biggest home game in a decade, right?
Miami opens at Florida, then Florida A&M,
Ball State,
USF.
At USF the week before.
USF could be a tricky one.
Yeah.
USF was good last year. Didn't they finish in the top 25?
I don't know if they're
Close to it.
they had a good season.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
I know they definitely had a decent year.
I think the ACC would like. I mean, I think the ACC would obviously love to have a 4-0 Virginia Tech team and a 4-0 Miami team. I mean,
College game day.
Well, especially if they're just both playing well. I mean, when was the last time Virginia Tech and Miami met with like serious implications?
With both teams playing well?
It would have been like 2017,
2017, there was a top 10 matchup.
Yep, that sure was.
Yeah.
That was when
It's been a
Miami had the
while.
Miami Knights jersey, and
That's right.
they beat Tech pretty bad.
They killed Josh
and then
Jackson.
they beat down Notre Dame the next week. I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Because
Right.
Miami started 10-0 that year and then completely fell apart.
And that
But,
was
yeah.
Miami's back after they won the Catholic first conference.
And they
game.
clearly were not back.
Yeah,
but-
it's been a while since Virginia Tech has been, pretty relevant, but it's also been a while.
well, I think
since
that
Miami
I think
has
that
been,
Miami game wasn't that the last time Tech was in the top 10.
I believe that's correct.
Probably, yeah.
I think it was.
Who was the head? Was Manny Diaz the head coach
It was
at that
Richt.
point?
Mark
that was
Richt.
before Diaz.
Yeah.
Mark Richt. There you go.
Yeah.
That
The
was
We're Back Bowl.
The Braxton Berrios era of Miami
yeah.
football.
And if both teams are 4-0, that's a game where that's like an event game. It's a Friday night.
Yeah.
Miami fans might actually show up to that game.
They did for that.
That is like an event city. And if there's like an appointment viewing type thing, they will show up to that. Now, if it's two teams that are, 2-2 versus 3-1, they will not show up for that.
They showed up to the 2017
Yeah,
game.
if it's 4-0 versus 4-0, that is like a thing that people will go to in Miami.
especially Friday night instead of like Saturday at noon. Definitely.
Yeah,
helps.
certainly a much better chance than like if it's a night event like that. But Miami shows up for big games. They don't show up for anything else.
All right. Well, it came out. Virginia Tech's line was set at over or under 7.5 wins. What do you guys feel? I feel like it's an over.
I feel
I'm
very good
hammering
about the over on
Yeah.
that. I don't know what the VIG is on that to get the over. I would imagine it's fairly significant, but Yeah, I like the over on that. Certainly, especially if we're going that they're going to go 4-0 in the non-conference, or that's what I would predict them to do if I was doing a season predictions right now. To go 500 in the ACC against this schedule, I think that's very doable.
I agree. I think 7.5 is low. Especially if you play this past season over again, knowing everything we know now, I think it's an 8-win team. So, and then everybody's back. So yeah, for me, absolutely over.
I'm with you guys on that, no doubt about it. It was interesting to see it was that low, and I think it's, to your point, Chris, a lot in part due to the fact that, well, they only won 6 and then a 7th with the bowl game last year, and it probably definitely could have looked different if they had started the way that maybe you wish they would have in retrospect. Let's talk about this video game a little bit, because
finally, let's get to some news here.
Andy and I, well, first and foremost, this is what's going to get us in the algorithm, hopefully on YouTube, and we get a whole new wave of Tech Sideline fans. But Andy, David, Nick, I know Chris isn't super into. You didn't play the old games as much.
No, I played them.
He played them.
I thought the last NCAA game sucked.
All right.
I thought it was horrible.
The Denard Robinson cover?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if that was the last one.
No, that was a good one.
I didn't like that one.
I broke that out during
I didn't
the
think
pandemic.
the option game played well. Players would get stuck on each other, kind of the suction blocking. It was really hard to run the option.
All right, we've identified the hater on the stage right now.
2006 was the best one ever.
Yeah, I agree that was the best one ever.
It had a soundtrack.
That was the one with Reggie on the cover. Reggie Bush, I believe.
Maybe, I forget.
And
was it Charles Woodson? I don't remember.
I think he was 05, but I could be wrong. But
06 would have been the 05 season.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
A lot of people staple the 06 game with Reggie on the cover as the best one.
When he played, so I don't know if they would have him.
He was on one of the
that many years later.
Right. Well, Andy.
Desmond Howard.
It was
Desmond Howard. We were all wrong.
when this came out, what was the
trailer?
The trailer. When the trailer came out, I'm sitting there, I'm watching the countdown. I was actually doing Tech baseball in Charlottesville, going on the air in like 15 minutes. I was like, I don't care, I have to watch this. Tapped in, grinning ear to ear. I don't think I've ever watched something so beautiful. What were your thoughts?
It was very healing to watch it.
Fix You, Coldplay.
Yeah. There was a version out there of "Fix You" by Coldplay. It's like this healed a nation here, bringing everybody together. I mean, you watch that. How could you not get hyped watching that? They got "Welcome to the Jungle" in the background. Clearly a
Such
play
good selection.
unlike old school college football fans. I mean, I hear that and I think of that scene in the program where they're doing trainings like Bull in the Ring and stuff like that. It like makes you want to run through a wall watching that thing. So it hit all the right notes. I know Tech fans are probably disappointed that the Hokies weren't in the game, clearly trying to hide that uniform reveal, so they don't do that. But I mean, everything about it is just like, I couldn't be more excited for this game coming out. Like, I am a 44-year-old adult, and I am going to buy a new gaming system just so I could play this game. And not, like, I have a child. Like, not to sound like Billy Zane from the Titanic, but I have a child here. And I'm still going to play this game a ton. So this is the thing that's going to get me back into gaming.
Just go talk to Mike Elko. You're going to be staying up till 4 a.m. playing this.
Well, yeah.
Not going to get any work done.
Like, as a father, I do have fatherly duties, so I have to, like, carve out my time appropriately. But, my daughter has a certain bedtime, and after that, like, fired up.
She's going to have to wake up at a certain time the next morning. You'll still be awake.
That's right. She'll go to camps all day, and, there's now a whole lot going on during the summer. So, I'll find my time.
No doubt.
Yeah, I think kind of a nice revival. I think so many people loved these games, and for so many reasons it went away, and after it being gone for 10 years, it's back. And I think nostalgia, I mean, it's just, and it's not like it's just, I think a lot of people would be fine if it was just like, a little bit better than NCAA 14, if it was just that game but a little bit better, right, with updated rosters, because so many people played like the revamped college football games. But to see that trailer and to hear Chris Fowler's voice, I mean, he like to have kept up with kind of a little bit of the journey, to see him and Kirk Herbstreit and Reese Davis and all the people that have done voiceovers for it. They're putting so much more time and effort into the game than I think they have in a really, really long time. And that's the most exciting part, because I think not only is it going to bring all of those warm, fuzzy feelings back some feelings of heartbreak maybe from playing the game, but it also feels like it's going to be the best college football game we've ever had. And I think like we're sitting there watching that trailer, it's just like, oh my God, this is going to be so good, so fun. I'm going to spend so much time this summer playing it. And I'm very excited because I think they're going, EA sounds like from everything we've read and seen, it's like EA's going above and beyond. It's not just, they're taking the Madden game and, layering college football over it. They're not just taking the old college football game and relayering it. It's like they spent so much time and effort trying to make this thing special, and it came across like that in the trailer.
Well, a whole bunch of college football writers got invited to Orlando to test out the game and play it, and it sounds like the reviews of the game are very positive. It sounds like there's better run blocking and opportunities in the option game like that. College football has evolved a lot since the last time the game was out, so I think RPOs are going to be a lot bigger part, and passing might be more difficult with illegal guys downfield and stuff like that. Just all the reviews that you heard from it is like the gameplay is very good and will be challenging. It just makes you that much more excited for the game.
Can I buy players?
There is NIL in the game.
Really?
It's like brand
And the transfer
appeal or
portal.
something
Okay,
like
so
that.
it might not be called.
I don't know they
okay,
necessarily have you're paying players or something like that, but you're recruiting based on brand appeal and stuff like that.
Okay,
So,
right. Okay, that makes sense. All right, I'll say this. I thought the trailer looked good, but at the same time, UVA football is going to put out a hype trailer this year, and it's going to look good because because that's what hype trailers are. They all look good.
well, there was one a couple years ago that Virginia Tech put out before the Liberty game. And Tech is 2 and 8
Right,
at that
yeah.
point, and it was I likened it to the Medellin trailer in Entourage, where they made it look like this amazing movie, and then it was here's this horrible makeup and everything like that. You can make anything look good, but I have faith that this will actually be good.
Yeah.
I want to believe, Chris. It's been so long.
I want them to make it for PC so you can mod it.
I think
No need to
You
mod
can
it.
mod
It's
in
gonna be
Understand
beautiful.
Man if I wanted to.
I think future versions they'll make it for PC. I just think there was so much, from what it sounds like, there was just so much they wanted to accomplish with this game. It's not like they're just going to release this one and then never come back.
Right.
But there was just so much they wanted to put into this game to get it back up and running, to give the fans so much that, I think Matt Brown had been writing about the PC stuff, and it sounds like, EA will seriously consider making it available on PC, for future games.
Yeah. Chris, what were your exact words when because you hadn't watched the trailer till today. We showed it
I
to
don't remember
you.
what I thought, but I'll say
Disappointment
this.
was the general.
Yeah, it
feeling.
was like Chris, what do you
wasn't
think?
blown away.
Everybody's
This
like,
stinks.
everybody's excited. Chris, what do you think? And it sucks.
First thing, I saw spin moves. How many guys do spin moves these days in college football? Right?
I'll tell you.
I seem to
Trey
remember
Benson in the trailer.
I seem to remember Braxton Miller putting a pretty
that
good
was 12
spin
years
on
ago,
it.
man. That was 12. Well, was it 12? No, that was 9 years ago. 9 years ago.
Within the last decade,
It's
it
in the
happens.
last decade. Fair enough. But all right, so it'll probably be fine. That said, how much is a PS5?
I don't know, but I'm gonna find out this summer. when I
Get
play.
the
400 now? Is it down to 400?
lot.
Get
Man,
the Xbox. It's less.
No, but you can't play. Well, right now you can't play cross-platform.
You can on some. They said you can on head to head, but you can't on
yeah,
Dynasty.
Listen, I'm a PlayStation loyalist.
I've got
I already
Back
bought
to
the
my
Xbox.
days.
I'm in the middle
A
of
PlayStation
remodeling
is
my
over
bathroom.
$400, Chris.
I'm in the middle of remodeling my bathroom. I've got to get a brand new HVAC
You just
put in
took a
later
trip
this
to
year.
Europe. You
And
can
I took a
find a
trip
way
to Europe.
you can find a way to buy a PlayStation.
Go
gotta
with the
do all
cheaper
these things.
vanity and buy the Xbox.
But I've still got my PS3. Maybe I'll go back to NCAA 2006. You know what I liked about that game is it had a different mode where you can create your own player. You yourself, you were a high school recruit.
Road to glory.
Road to glory.
Yeah, Road to Glory. So you'd play 3 or 4 games, and how well you did determine the scholarship offers.
That's
And
in the new
and-
game.
Is it? And
I created
no high school,
so you get
though.
to you get to college, and you're there in your dorm room. It's your desk, right? And it's got the depth chart and roster over here of what you click on. It's got a picture of your girlfriend. Remember? Do you remember that feature?
Yes, I do.
And it's like, she wasn't very good looking when you were a freshman and you hadn't proven. But if you're like a senior and you're winning the Heisman, she progressively gets better looking as the game goes on.
You could only do that
little
in
details like that.
2006.
Yeah.
I remember creating player Tim Riggins, running back. They got recruited, so that was fun.
Yeah.
Some good times playing it. Like when I was first moved to Danville, like not a lot to do in Danville.
There's not. I can confirm.
So I played the heck out of that game, and I took like Vanderbilt to be an SEC power. And I'm playing with this quarterback. I'm like, this quarterback's pretty good. It was Jay Cutler. It turned out to be Jay Cutler, but like turned them into a national power. So good times playing that game. I'm glad it's back, even though Enter Sandman is not in the game.
Yes.
We should point that out. Licensing Metallica songs is very expensive, so that's not going to be like a generic rock song in the intro. So,
with that being said, I think they're gonna nail because of what we've seen for them doing other entrances. They're gonna nail everything Sandman looks like. It's just gonna be a slightly different song. It's gonna be like a generic heavy metal song. But it's still going to be running out to the Hokie Stone. I bet they're still going to do the Let's Go Hokie chant. They're still going to have the tunnel, the fireworks,
you could just
the walk.
put the song on your stereo.
That's true.
And just
That's
turn
true.
it on.
Well,
I mean,
Alexa, play Enter Sandman.
there are hacks to this thing.
In the old one, NCAA 14, I uploaded, I got so into it. I uploaded all the MP3 files to Enter Sandman for Tech and like things that they would do at the Dome, like they would play Hell's Bells on third down, and I would put that in there so that, and you could, the game lets you put when it's going to do it. So like you can put if they have that feature, you can put Enter Sandman in the game for when Tech runs out. So
There
it
you
still
go.
might be
There you go.
possible, folks,
Yeah.
without a mod.
Yeah, and people you can do things like that these days. So why would you pay Metallica whatever amount it costs to license a song like that when everybody can just do that?
If I'm Metallica, like wouldn't I want to introduce that to a new like generation of fans? Like, I don't know.
So what wasn't it? No jump around at Wisconsin, but
That's
they
right.
do have like Zombie Nation and like Seven Nation Army maybe was one of them.
Mo Bamba,
Bamba was in there.
Zombie Nation, Neck
Neck
from LSU,
from
is supposedly
LSU,
in there.
which is awesome.
Sandstorm is in there.
You think Tom Petty, Won't Back Down is in there?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, there's so many.
Country Roads.
There's so many songs that are played at different stadiums across the country. I don't know. We'll find out if they're in there or not.
We'll find out. Are you guys gonna pay the extra $30 to get it 3 days early?
Yeah,
No,
I already
I don't
did.
think I'll do
I already
that.
pre-ordered it.
Did you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
When's it coming out?
So it comes out
July 19th.
19th.
I think I'm at the tail end of vacation.
Oh, I
anyway.
mean, I remember lining up.
That's the week before the ACC kickoff, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you ever go at like midnight to get it from the video
No,
game? So I used to do that when I was in college. Like my roommates and I, we'd reserve our copy. They'd open the mall at like 11:45 at night, and then they'd put the game on. Like Electronics Boutique would open at midnight, and you could.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, and then we'd play it till
That's
3 a.m.
different.
Now it
and
just
then
is
go
like
to bed. Yeah.
now it just like downloads onto your.
We're just gonna
Right.
be waiting till 3 in the morning, midnight West Coast time, for it to just keep hitting the refresh button until the game pulls up. That's what we're gonna be doing.
How good were you guys at the game? Were you like very good?
I played on Heisman difficulty.
Syracuse won a lot of national championships when I was a kid.
See, this is why the game's not good, because that's impossible.
Well, does your favorite school have one either, Chris?
Oh no, that's what I'm saying.
I
I
know.
mean, like, I'm pretty sure I won one as Old Dominion in the last NCAA version.
This is going
Right.
to be my issue though. Is like the gameplay will be different, and like
Yeah.
you're not just gonna like pick it up and be like from 10 years ago and be like I'm as good as I was 10
Right.
years ago, and I don't have as much time now to like
Mm.
I had nothing better to do when I was 23 or
And living in
whatever.
Danville.
Yeah, and living in Danville. Like just I played that game a lot. I don't know if I'll have as much time to play it now, so I fear that I won't be as good at this game as I was.
I
back
did
then.
read that from some people who went down and tested the game, that like somebody was like, yeah, I threw like picks on my first 3 drives because it's like it took me time to get used to just the throwing mechanics.
Got to adjust to the speed of the
Yeah.
game.
So that's exciting because it means like, I think so many people have been playing NCAA, people still play NCAA 14 because it's the last NCAA game. People play Madden a lot because it's the most recent football game. It's like, this is going to bring so many people in from so many different areas, and you're going to have to adapt, and that's going to be exciting.
we're gonna have a crate. Well, it's not cross-platform, but we're gonna have some awesome battles, no doubt, with everybody on the set. All right, let's talk a little bit of basketball here before we let everybody go. First and foremost, Jaden Schutt commits to Virginia Tech out of the transfer portal from Duke. David, I know you want to break him down a little bit, and you also wrote a pretty sweet article on the fact that Tech basketball is just kind of entering the summer in a pretty good spot. You feel?
Yeah, I mean, I talked with Mike Young, so I kind of like Andy talking with pride. That was more Mike Young's words than mine.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting talking to a guy like Mike Young in May, because when I spoke with him, it was the first week of the first summer session, so all the players are on campus. Mike Young has talked with them and worked with them sparingly, and he's still trying to figure out what he knows what he has, but he's still trying to figure everything out. Jaden Schutt, he's a really good addition, former top 75 recruit. He spent 2 seasons at Duke, redshirted this past year. He'll be a redshirt sophomore, with 3 years of eligibility left. That is a huge get for Virginia Tech. He's a really good player. He just hasn't played much because of injury, and he's going to kind of be forced into a role where he's going to have to take up a big burden on the wing. But he's one of 8 newcomers for Virginia Tech, which is pretty crazy to think about. Mike was asked about, and when I spoke with him, was asked about just kind of Virginia Tech fans. So many people love Virginia Tech because it's college, and one of the things about college sports is you get a chance to know your guys. You know who's playing for your team from a fan's perspective for multiple years. And newcomers come in, but players stay for 3-4 years. And Mike's response was, buckle up, because this is the new era. Virginia Tech lost 8 guys, brought in 8 guys. Duke lost 9 or 10 and is bringing in 9 or 10 guys. I mean, and this is like Duke we're talking about. I feel all right, Gio, about the Hokies' new roster, what it looks like. They brought in 6 transfers. They brought in Hussier Miller from Temple. They brought in Rodney Brown Jr. from Cal. They brought in Schutt. They brought in Ben Burnham from College of Charleston. Toby Lawal from VCU. And I'm forgetting one.
Gosh.
And then they brought in, oh no, sorry, that's
5.
I think that's right. And then they have 3 high school kids, and they've got Ryan Jones Jr., top 75 recruit at center, Tyler Johnson at the 4, and then they've got Ben Hammond from Paul VI, who was a recent commit. He's a point guard. I think it's a pretty balanced roster, but there's still a lot of questions to be answered. And talking with Mike Young, he's kind of like, summer becomes so much more important because you're trying to integrate so many new guys. It's like, I'm sure if you asked coaches, they'd love to go on a trip to Europe or wherever, an overseas trip every offseason.
I was going to say, I wish they'd saved last year's European trip for this year.
Yeah, and you'd love to do it every year, I'm sure, because it's such a team building activity. But because you're adding so many guys, whereas you say a football team, it has 85 scholarship players. In case of a coaching change, you might have a good portion of your roster come and go. But basketball teams, I mean, look at what Calipari's doing at Arkansas, right? He basically started fresh, completely new roster. Building that up is going to be so interesting. I think the Hokies have a lot of really good, talented guys. I think one of the good things that Mike Young and his staff have done is they've added guys with multiple years of eligibility, which gives you time to work with them and build them up. I think there's a lot of excitement around some of these guys, like Toby Lawal, but I'm very interested to see how everything meshes together. It's a puzzle, and how quickly Mike Young can kind of put this puzzle together, whether he can figure things out. Usually we've seen with transfers, takes them a while to get adjusted. Are the Hokies finding their groove in December? Are they finding their groove in February? Right? You need to hit the nail on the head sooner rather than later. So, Mike Young, as far as the 13 13th scholarship goes, Mike Young did say that the Hokies are, will look to add somebody, but they're not going to add somebody unless they, feel it's somebody that's the right fit. But yeah, I mean, I think they're in an all right position. It's a different looking roster. I think more athletic than last year's, but a lot of questions still to be answered. And I think a lot of guys that are in a way unproven outside of, a guy like Hasir Miller, Ben Burnham, Elijah Petit. Those are kind of the three guys that have a lot of experience. Everybody else on the roster, talented or, wherever their talent levels are. Like I look at a guy like Schutt, hadn't played a lot of college basketball. That's not saying he's not going to be good, but there's still a lot of questions.
I agree with all that. And I think, I remember when we did our preview podcast last year, and I think we knew what the Hokies had. I predicted them to be a pretty high seed in the NIT, and I think they ended up being a 3 seed in the NIT or whatever. I just think it was like there weren't a lot of surprises last season, for me at least. There's more unknown this year, and the unknown can be scary because you don't know what you got, but it can also be a good thing. Like I think we knew what the starting lineup was going to be last year, and outside of 1 or 2 games when he switched some things around at the 4 spot because he just couldn't get any production out of either guy, we pretty much saw the same starting lineup all year. This year, we don't know what the starting lineup's going to look like. There are 2 or 3 starting positions that are open. And even at the 5 spot, you talk about Elijah Petit, he can't really play over 18 or 20 minutes a game. So there's going to be a lot of minutes available at center. Who's going to get those minutes? There are 3 other guys that could potentially factor in there. I just think there's more competition for starting spots. There's more competition for spots in the rotation. So it's an unknown, and like I said, that can be scary, but that can also be a good thing because theoretically that competition makes everybody better. And, Tech needed a reset.
Yeah.
Mike Young said it after the season. We were saying it on this podcast before the season ended.
And he confirmed it to me when I asked about it. Yeah, I think it was a good position to flip the roster. Not that he wanted to do that, but I think a reset was good, and now Virginia Tech can kind of go into summer, and he's got all summer to work with these guys, and like you said, question marks, some maybe better than others. For example, I got a question about the 2 guard, right? Your 3 2 guards on roster right now are Jaden Schutt, Rodney Brown Jr., and Jaden Young. You've got a redshirt sophomore, a sophomore, and a sophomore.
Mm-hmm.
Very young. Not a ton of experience there, right?
And 2 of them are going to have to start. We just don't know which 2.
Those guys, they're going to have to step up. I think Virginia Tech adding a guy like Ben Burnham, I think it makes it even more important because he's a guy who, I think he's a 5th-year guy who has been around for a long time. He's played in NCAA tournaments. That's a guy that his experience will probably benefit in the long run. And it's not like he's a scorer too. I mean, I think he had like 17 in the NCAA tournament against Alabama. I think Toby Lawal is maybe the most interesting because of his potential. Mike Young compared him to Deron Washington. He's got a 49.5-inch vertical. My question is, and I asked Mike Young this, and Chris, you'll find this very interesting. I said, can he play the 4 and the 5, or he's just kind of a 4 right now? And he said, if Toby Lawal puts on 20 more pounds this summer, he'll have a chance to play the 5. Mm-hmm. But he's just not big enough to play against, in terms of weight mass. He'll get pushed around playing against ACC level 5s right now. Can he stretch the floor though, right? If Lawal can guard 5s and stretch the floor a little bit more, the Hokies could potentially play him at the 5 and go smaller.
Right.
So it's all about the versatility right now, and that's something Mike Young has to find out over the summer.
Yeah, like I don't think that you can play Lawal and Petit together.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's enough playmaking ability and shooting ability at the 4 and the 5 positions. So you got to be able to stretch the court in a Mike Young offense, and that was an issue a little bit for the Hokies at times this past season. They need some type of playmaker at one of those 2 spots, and they didn't really have that this past season. Like you get the ball inside, and it would kind of disappear. He's got to get his lineup. He's got to figure out his rotations and his mixes and things like that, and And that's what this summer and the preseason and early season will be for.
Awesome. Well, I think that goes ahead and wraps things up for episode 362 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. What's coming up in the coming weeks for you guys that people can be on the lookout for from an editorial
We're
standpoint?
going to have a Curtis Perry scouting report today. I'm going to be doing a Q&A tomorrow.
Still some leftover Brent Pry stuff from last week, just sort of odds and ends. And I think today Game Times come out for their early season stuff.
About 2:30.
2:30.
Yeah, I'm in the process of setting up an interview with Megan Duffy. I was trying to fit it in this week, but I am moving, so that kind of made my schedule a little bit more hectic. I'm hoping for sometime next week, but it might be the following week because it sounds like she might be out of town. So interview with Megan Duffy coming soon. But yeah, it was nice to talk to Mike Young, and I'll probably write a basketball Q&A next week. I was kind of waiting to see if my schedule, or if I was going to be able to pin an interview down with her this week. But yeah, I mean, Andy's talked to Pry recently. I've talked to Mike Young recently. Going to get Duffy here soon. So we're covering all the bases, and yeah, nice to get back on the podcast for first time in over a month.
Absolutely. It's been a second. Well, appreciate you guys as always, and looking forward to doing it again soon, especially as football season continues to approach us. For Sam Mostow behind the scenes, for Nick Brown, our producer, for David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, Chris Coleman, I'm Giovanni Heater saying so long from Blacksburg. We'll see you next time.